yeah, turn your image off for the sake of our bandwidth with all these
Okay.
big slides.
Okay.
Okay, so since it's on my machine, I think you'll have to ask me when to forward your slides.
Okay. So
So
if you
oh,
can,
did you want to say anything else about your work and your credits?
well,
And
I guess I should just say that I have been a freelance illustrator for 40 years, and I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I live in Oregon currently with my wife Melody and dogs.
I hope we're recording. Hold on. At the moment, I can't see our recording button. I need to check that. Do you mind?
No, go ahead.
Oh, it is. My husband says it is. Never mind. Never mind.
And I'm also an author. I have 16 published novels and 4 collections. My education is fine arts. So when I decided to go into freelance illustration, I brought some of my fine art sensibilities into the work. And at first that caused me a little bit of problem. And then after a while, it became a strength. As I think art directors began to realize that I was maybe a little bit different and that was perhaps of some value. So I don't know. I grew up barefoot in the trees in Tennessee. I was a wild kid. I was a bad kid. I was a hippie kid. I got involved in doing art at a very early age because my father did a lot of artwork, and he just was fascinated with all kinds of things. And that was a way that I sought approval at first, and then I really took to it. Uh, I studied art, and then I realized I didn't like galleries, but I dearly loved good illustration. So I taught myself that and got involved in illustration over time. That took some effort, but I got there. So um, if you want to start the slides, or if anybody has any questions before we start, I'm happy to try and answer them.
Questions, anyone?
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead then.
Okay, go ahead, Gloria, with the
Oh,
first
I'm
thing.
going ahead too. I think I'll go into my slideshow mode now. So this
Okay.
is going to take a minute to register on your screen, I believe.
All right, but if you go into slideshow, it's going to give a timing between the pieces.
No,
And if I'm still talking about one
no,
piece,
no. Mine doesn't do that.
okay,
No,
I
I'm not in Mac.
okay,
There's no timer set up on this.
I see.
It just takes a minute to switch over
Okay.
there.
Hallie, what's up?
Okay, we're ready to go.
I'll holler for you if we need you, okay? Thank you.
Oh, okay, we're ready to go now.
Okay, go ahead then.
Okay, so how's that?
Ah,
Okay, that is a controlled accident painting that's 4 feet wide and 2 feet tall. I titled it Abandoned Waterway because that's what it looked like to me. It is produced with acrylic paint on a gessoed surface. The paint is pushed around with a plastic tube. And that plastic tube is long and thin, and so it gives a lot of horizontal shapes. But it also, it's a tube you can roll in the paint, you can squeegee the paint with it, you can compress it so that it gives sort of ribs. You can see that in the water. If you sort of, it's flexible enough, you can sort of bounce on it. And if I can switch to start video, I can show you what that tube looks like. Okay.
You can't switch out of this easily. I don't know how we do that.
I
You may
can't
have
do
to
it.
just
just
tell.
stay there. We can see him.
Can you? Okay, so here's the tube, and it's hollow.
You want me to wait? Do you want me to stop sharing?
Sure. Can you stop sharing for a minute?
There.
Okay, so here's the tube. What these are, this is department stores put these on their fluorescent bulbs that are in the ceiling so that if they break, they don't shower down on the customers. So you can get them at lighting stores or like Home Depot.
Mhm.
So it's a hollow plastic tube. It's flexible. And this is a bigger one. The only advantage to this is that when you're squeegeeing paint, when you're getting paint on it, it will drip off unless you have more territory. So this has more territory than this. Does that make sense?
You mean it's a bigger radius?
Yes, it has more surface area for rolling, and so
Mhm.
it can hold more paint without causing problems like dripping.
I see.
Okay,
Okay.
so other things, just real quickly, I'm going to show these things. Rotten cotton bed sheet. Pressed into the paint, you can get rocky forms. You can draw them out like this to do horizons. You can bunch them up like this to do mountains and rocks. Press it into the paint. Another thing that I use is sheet acetate. And so pressed against the paint and pulled, pressed against the paint and pulled off, you get all kinds of veining, strange veining. I'm not sure if it's capillary action. It kind of, I'm not certain of that, but you can see some of the shapes that were left on it from the paint.
And you told me, if I may just interject, that it has to be a certain consistency because it is muddy if you don't get it right.
That's right. The paint should be about the consistency of blood.
Mhm.
I put it that way partly because I'm a horror illustrator, but also partly because it's a visceral knowledge that I think we all have, what the viscosity of blood is. We seem to know that, I think. So when I describe that, people say, "Oh, okay." So
Back-
Gloria, I have
Back to the
stopped my video.
slides. Okay. Here you are. And here we go. Okay, once again, we'll start at the next one into slideshow. There.
Okay, that one is called A Familiar Crow, and I don't remember the novel it was for. Maybe it was, I think the novel was by David Niall Wilson. Anyway, it went away.
Well, I was trying to put it into the whole screen mode. Just a second. I need to. It's not working from.
Well, it's
Zoom.
filling my screen.
Is that okay? Because you're still going to have these controls at the top. You don't mind that?
I don't mind it.
It's
Okay.
fine.
All right. We'll just go on in this mode then.
Okay, so the tombstone that this bird is sitting on, that rockiness down there is what the rag can give you. I don't know if you can see the cracked sort of old rock look of that. Then the sky is done with that cylinder sliding through the paint. Later, I added the moon. Are there any questions about that one?
Yeah, the ragged kind of thing. That's where you've made ridges. You've compressed the cylinder. Is that what you did?
No, it's not compressing the cylinder, but it's sliding the cylinder through the paint.
Oh,
So,
okay. Okay.
so the background was dark, and I put a light sort of gray blue paint on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I slid the tube through the paint in horizontal fashion or direction, and I did sort of swooping forms, but that were primarily horizontal.
I
So
get it. I
it
get
looked
it.
like a sky.
Mm-hmm. Now, could we do an order of procedures? You start with your controlled accidents, which would be those gradations of blue. Then the figurative things are added. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And
Uh,
this
the
is a
tombstone
cover?
in the foreground, the tombstone in the foreground was just blocked in, and then I used a rag on it to get those rocky shapes.
Mhm.
And then I add a little highlight and shadow to firm it up, and then that's done.
And then I guess my final question on these, I guess I'll stick to a pattern then, is what is the story and what is the significance here?
I have no idea.
Okay,
I didn't read the novel. I was told what to paint by the art director.
so don't bother with those questions then.
Well, no, that's not true. It varies from publisher to
Oh,
publisher, and I've worked for a lot of different publishers.
okay.
Yeah.
Are we done with Mr. Crow?
Yes, and we can move on if you'd like.
Move on.
Okay, so this is for either volume 1 or volume 2 of the century's best horror fiction. And I was asked by the publisher to produce a cover for each of those volumes that just had horrific stuff in it, and please use controlled accidents.
Mm.
And so what I did was I made a clever mess using my controlled accident tools. And then I looked into that mess and I did what I call forced hallucination. I looked for shapes. You know how you find shapes in clouds and rocks and wood grain, that sort of thing. That's what I did. And using paint, light, shadow, and color, I brought the things that I saw out. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm getting something. I'll be right back.
And does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. So I don't know if I don't recall if I put the second volume in this, but it's it's a totally different painting, different colors, different monsters or ghostly forms, whatever. I don't know if it's in here.
Okay, so are you ready for the next?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, so this is for a novel called um, Perfect Union, and it is a bizarro novel by Cody Goodfellow, and it's about sort of a cult, and the cult is kind of a hive mind, and it's about gathering together these humans and making a society that's more of a hive mind. And I don't remember enough about the novel, which I did read, to tell you much more, except that my solution to this, okay, so the house, which is the head of this figure, is where they met. And the body of this corpse, the body of this giant, I mean, is made up of corpses, because the people that were part of this cult were kind of dead-like. They were not as conscious as a regular human being might be. They were, because they were a hive mind, these guys were mostly drones, I guess. Does that make any sense? Well, anyway,
Yes,
this
yes, it
was
does.
my solution to that job. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, well, I guess I would say one other thing about this, and that is that I blocked in the figure, and I think I used tinfoil pressed into lighter paint that was put on top of that blocked in dark form. And that gives you lots of little chips and curls and wrinkles. And so in that, I looked for these corpses and brought them out with highlight, shadow, and color.
Hmm,
Much the way I did the rocks over here on the right, the lower right.
I get it.
Okay.
All righty, next.
Yes, please. This was for a bizarro zombie novel. And I didn't read this one. I was told to do something that had a zombie-like face that said something about a post-apocalyptic city. And so I just ended up combining the two, and they liked it. And I just made a controlled accident mess and cleaned it up into this painting.
Okay. Next.
This was for a Lovecraftian type horror novel, and I was told what to paint, but I chose to start it with a controlled accident. The paint in the background is pushed around with the cylinder. And then I imposed the conductor on it, allowing the controlled accident to show through.
Fascinating. The conductor is sort of like a, how do you pronounce it? Cthulhu? Cthulhu.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And one of the things that's going on here is that I am painting the conductor in here with mostly shadow at first, and then a little bit of highlight. And my medium value, I'm allowing to be the controlled accident peeking through.
Yes, you're using medium on that so that you have a transparent area.
I am, but that's not what I mean when I say medium value.
No, but I mean you're using the painting medium so that you could see the background through.
In this case, I may not have.
Oh.
Acrylics are translucent when you want them to be.
Yeah, or you can just repaint it in the lighter tones as if it were. Yeah, I see. Okay.
Well, but I wasn't.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
mean to interrupt, but I was just wondering about the process and kind of the buildup of this visual that you're showing. How does
Yes.
that come about?
Okay, so I can demonstrate this, but I think we might run into some difficulties getting that done.
I think more
without-
generally, just like the kind of softwares. I mean, I don't want to get too
There's
technical,
no
but
software. There's no software. This is an
oh,
acrylic.
okay.
So it's acrylic paint on hardboard that has been gessoed. Gesso is the
Oh, okay.
primer. So so I have the white gessoed hardboard. This is a painting that's 12 by 18 inches, so it's not very big. I started out with putting some odd colors on, the greens and yellows and oranges. And I left them bright because I wanted I just want variation in my background colors. Okay. So then I put on top of that the reds and browns. And then I pushed those around with the plastic cylinder while it was wet. And when it dries, it's like this. And then I had already drawn the conductor on a piece of paper. And so looking at my sketch, I started painting with dark blue paint. Actually, no, I didn't start with dark blue. I started with probably those browns, those dark browns that are in the background. And I began to not block in. I began to paint the dark shadowed areas. And then I added the blue later for the
Okay.
hat and the clothing.
And this is all acrylic or
It is all acrylic, so
wow.
it is put on with brushes. There's no airbrush or anything like that. It's all I like to call painting with brushes pushing colored mud around with a hairy stick.
Good. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because that's what painting is. Now the hairy stick is fairly sophisticated, and the hairs all go the same
Maybe
way.
it would be good to explain to the Luddites or non-experienced people like me what you're doing here. So it's very impressive. So
Well, thank you.
Well, I told you he was good, didn't I, gang? Yeah. All right. Well,
Okay,
are we ready to? I know I love this one too, but we need to move
you
on.
can move on. You can move.
Okay.
Okay, so this one, really the only controlled accident aspect of this is those weird trees in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Those are applied to the surface by well, I would mix the colors, those different values of green, and I would put them on a slick, cleaned off palette. And then I would take, so it'd be very thick paint, very thick, like right out of the tube, except that I had mixed them with a palette knife. And I put them on that slick surface, and then I pressed pieces of mat board against them and pulled them away. And when you
Mm-hmm.
pull them away, that thick paint just veins up. You probably know that from, I don't know, making cookies or who knows what, applying plaster to something. You get these weird, veiny forms. And if I then take those pieces of mat board and press them so lightly that I'm not pushing them all the way down, only the veins will stay on the painting.
Mm-hmm.
So I had done the
Very-
sky, and before I painted her in there, or even probably the grass in the foreground or the tree, I put those plants in back there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can firm them up by putting highlights on the top edges, and I can shadow them a little bit. And they just are these spontaneous forms. And the reason I go for these, I can these spontaneous discoveries and forms, I can discuss if you want.
Well, we could get to that after you go through all of them
Okay,
as
okay,
the whole principle why you do it.
okay. You go
Shall
ahead
we?
to the next one
Okay.
then. Okay, this is done with a rotten cotton rag. That's what created all the rocky forms, and I had already drawn the fossil on a piece of paper and the figure that would be standing looking up at it. And I just, as I did with the conductor, I started with the darks and I painted the dark form in, allowing the rotten cotton rag rough, rocky forms to show through. And then, so I added the darks and then I added the lights.
And some of this was just these light brown to cream, but you added the edges, right, to some of it.
Yes, yes. Like the dark edges over to the right side,
Mhm.
like that make it look like this is a sedimentary rock that has cracked and broken away.
That's where the artistry comes in, Groove, knowing where to do that. So
So yeah, it's just fun for me.
it's great.
It's like exploration instead of just grueling design and painting.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, you're so different. I don't mean to diss anybody else in the field, but you're so different because
Well,
very few will take, they don't want to take that chance. It's like
I just
diving.
take big chances.
Yeah,
I just take big chances.
you really do.
All artists allow their brush to go wonky for effect on occasion.
That's true, but yours is much wonkier, much more often.
All
I'll put
right.
it that way. Okay.
Okay, so this is if you roll the tube downward, you get these erosion forms. And so I painted the light back there. The whole surface through the window looked like that light greenish and bluish there. And I later painted the face in by adding shadow and light and color. And what I did was I painted it in between the drips. And at the bottoms of the drips, I added a little shadow and a little highlight to make those look like droplets were forming. And then I painted the window frame and the matches on the windowsill. Does that make sense?
Oh, to me it does. I think it does. It's starting for even non-painters, I'm sure.
This was an interior, this is colorized. I colorized it in the computer, to make a print of it. So this is the print image. That is to say, a reproduction that I sell. But the painting was done as an interior for The Bottoms by Joe Lansdale. And in the book, it was printed in black and white.
I'm gonna take a little break and see if I can open chat. I don't even know if I can open it. Yeah. Most of it is, I didn't know if any of the questions are coming. Oh, they're saying it's amazing. So it's nice that they're saying that, but it's no questions.
Okay,
Okay.
how many people altogether?
6.
6. Okay.
Remember that it's going on YouTube and you will get 10 times that many. So this
Oh,
is,
well, that's kind of fun.
yeah, it always does. You will, because they know you at Tucson and,
Okay.
So I will move on here. If I can get it to move. Why is it not moving? I'll try again. There we go.
There you go. Okay, so this was for Jim Moore's Smile No More, a novel about an evil clown. And the only thing I designed was the knife, the rose, and the head of the clown. The rest was found within the controlled accident. And the controlled accident was produced by putting light paint on a dark surface and pushing it around with the plastic tube. Actually, no, not the plastic tube, the sheet acetate.
Okay. Shall we move on?
You
Any
can.
questions? Okay, moving on.
This is a cover for a book called Imprint, and I forget the author's name, unfortunately. It was for Gale. It was for the 5-star imprint of Gale. And I don't remember a whole lot about it, but this is a situation in which they had a very small budget, and they asked me to do the painting, and I said, well, can I just do a controlled accident? The art director knew what I meant. He said, go for it. I produced it. Well, the idea is if you don't like it, you don't have to take it. But their budget was so small, I wasn't going to do a sketch and deliver that for them. It just was too much. So I did this, and they were very pleased. And I guess I would say that the surface of the planet is done with the sheet acetate, and then the clouds were done by after the surface was all dry. I wet it, and I just oozed white paint into it to make clouds, because when the paint is sort of oozed into water and its viscosity is somewhat thick, it leaves thick areas, but then it spreads out into thinner areas, much like what clouds do.
Looks
So
good to me.
one of the things I do is I look to see what paint does, how it acts. And then I kind of store away, oh, I could use that. And I store away what I did, the viscosity of the paint, how I treated it, how much water I might have put in it, whether I touched it with this, that, or the other. I store all that stuff away as a sort of a repertoire of textures and actions I can take to get me halfway there before I'm actually picking at it with a brush. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but I have a question. It gradually goes from brown to blue. Did you use a medium there?
No,
No,
I
you just
just,
use very
I
thin
just,
blue
I
paint.
just, I just thinned out the paint toward the
Okay.
top.
Okay. What do you
No,
think?
knowing that I was going to be putting a white edge there with that I would, it would be blended, but it would be a white edge. So I thinned out the paint until
With what?
the brown began to disappear.
If you didn't use medium, what did you use? Water?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So,
Sometimes I use medium, sometimes I don't.
okay. Next one.
Yep. All right. So the eye, the big green eye, was done by, how did I do that? uh, I don't really remember. I think I
Oh,
did
just,
it with the cylinder, and
yeah,
I
it looks
cut the
like
hole.
cylinder work.
I cut the hole for the pupil later.
Mhm,
Okay, so the planet, I'm sorry, the sun back there is supposed to be
mhm,
like a red giant. That was
mhm.
done by um, putting red paint on a bright white surface and pushing it around with the plastic tube, and then going in with the yellow and orange highlights. And after I had done all that, I brought in the blackness of space by painting darks in.
I see. Very, very three-dimensional.
So then the figure and the hardware of the ship are all just imposed later.
Okay.
I'm using words that make sense to me, but if they don't make sense to you, you should
No,
you
I
should
think
ask questions.
people are following, or they would ask.
Okay.
We have the next one now?
Okay. This is one for a novel called Littlest Death. It's subtitle is An Afterlife Fantasy. It's by Eric Witchey, and it's about the different. It's about a little girl who is in charge of the death of little tiny things like plankton, and she doesn't feel like she's of great value. So it is a coming of age story. It is her coming to understand the value of her work. I don't know if that makes sense, but you might have to read the novel. But that's Cerberus there with her. Um, and this is an environment. The stalagmites of this cavern are produced with the acetate and the cylinder, and the water was created by rolling that cylinder down through the paint and bouncing it every couple of, like every quarter inch.
Oh, mhm.
And as it bounces, it creates that liquidy pattern. So what I did was I rolled it down fairly evenly until I got to where the water was to begin, and then I began bouncing it,
I see.
and it creates the ripples.
Nice palette, nice colors, and very limited palette there.
Very limited, yes, yes. The
Okay, so
next,
this one.
okay, so this is a banshee for a book called was an art book. I've forgotten what it was called. Anyway, I was asked to paint a banshee, and the rock formations in the background are by rolling the tube down and creating the erosion pattern. Also, the tree was some of that, and then the water is taking bright paint and putting it on a dark. I had painted the shape of that little creek with dark paint, and then I put light paint on it and slid the tube through it,
Mhm,
and it created the ripples. And then I went in and firmed some of that up by painting it,
mhm.
painting highlights on it. The figure is translucent because, once again, I had designed her elsewhere, and using that as reference, uh, painted her in by adding uh, shadows first, and then highlights, and then I did a little bit of tinting to get a slight flesh color, and of course, then the sort of dark forest green of her rags, her clothing.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay, so this is for Brian Keene's City of the Dead. And I produced the city by using the cylinder, and I produced the ghostly skeletons by oozing paint into okay, so how do I say it? So the paint, the buildings were all done first and allowed to dry. Then I got the surface wet and I oozed the dark paint in that would become the skeletons, and I pushed it around a little bit. I can touch it up a little bit, but with a rag. But it's just paint that's oozed in. It ends up with these soft edges like smoke. And then I went in with highlights and shadows and found the skeletons and brought them out. And so that meant that I had to go in and patch the sky here and there. But all of that, that's just part of the job.
Okay.
This was for a novel called Empire of Ants or something like that. And I don't remember the author's name. And I started with a controlled accident that was from the acetate. I put the sort of the orange on top of a dark brown surface. And I pushed the acetate against it and pulled it away, and that created the veining. I then went in with all the other colors, and once again, I had a figure I had drawn, and I put her in, adding only highlights and shadows. If you look at the ribs on her like corduroy shirt, you can see how just crudely I put those highlights in. And I spent more time on her face and getting it to have volume, but you can see, especially on her right shoulder, those are just lines that are put in to produce a little bit of highlight there.
Wonderful. Is this the same
No,
one?
that's the first one we did.
How did we get back to that?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll have to find where we are.
I'll
Sorry.
tell you when to stop.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you missed it. Go back. Go forward. Go
Oh,
forward.
there.
Go there. That's the one. Okay, this is where I discovered that I could make ripples in water. This is a painting that's about, I don't know, 30 inches by 20 inches. And I had designed the skeleton in the water. I only drew half of it though. Because I knew the rest of it was going to be a reflection in the water. When I started the painting, it was a white gessoed surface. I put different hues of brown all over the entire surface, and I began rolling the cylinder down it. I had marked where the water starts, so only at the edges I had little pencil marks, and I had to roll it down as straight across as I could so that I could maintain a convincing horizon when I got to the water. So I rolled that tube down through the brown paint until I got to those marks. As I said, making sure I was straight across. When I got to those marks, ever after that, I bounced it. And that gave me all that liquidy, ripply surface. I then painted in the skeleton, this rock in the foreground, or whatever that is. I cut out the sky and put it in. I put in the little patches of grass and the roots up there, and the painting was done.
Ready for the next one?
Yes? Okay, this is this is Ray Garton's Slivers of Bone. And I think that was his way of saying that it was a collection of his short fiction. And I think Slivers of Bone was his way of saying little short stories, but scary short stories. But I don't know. I knew I wanted the knife. I own that knife. And I knew I wanted bones to look like they'd been whittled on. So I put light brown hues on a dark, very, very dark blue surface. And I think I pressed the rag into it to get those shapes. You can shape the wrinkles in the rag to give you different forms. And in this case, I think I used it to create the bones. I then solidified the bones. I looked for bones within the mess I had made, and I began to bring them out by adding shadows and highlights. So then, of course, down at the bottom, I added the blood and the little chips, the little slivers. And I added the knife. And then I went in behind all the bones and added the little blue light back there. So I had to create a gradient from the brightest blue to the dark blue that was already there.
It really is effective. The blue highlights.
Oh, thank you. So this was Doug Clegg's The Attraction, and it was about a little monster that was in a roadside attraction that came to life finally. I think that's what it was about. I didn't read the novel. I was told what to paint, and it was a little almost infant-like skeleton with long claws, feet, and hands. And I just put it on top of, I just imposed it on this bizarre controlled accident background that was created by starting with red paint and putting yellows and oranges on it and pressing the wrinkled acetate into it. And it created all those strange veining forms. Once I had painted the skeleton in there, I put the blue back in there to make it pop out, the brighter blue. And then I just added little bits of blue up into the red here and there to just create some variation.
It's very nice, the color combination.
Thank you. This is for The Skull Ring by Scott Nicholson. And I created a controlled accident by having, well, let's see. It was a white gessoed surface that I put some pinks and yellows and oranges on. And then I put the sort of gray-green paint on and used the cylinder to create that. It kind of looks like perspective. Things diminish as they go upward. So I used the cylinder to help me create that by pivoting it and sort of bouncing it through the paint. And then I had already drawn the house and the face and the skull, and I imposed them in the same way that I've described before, starting with shadows and then adding highlights and then tinting. The painting is called The Creeps Within.
I see the translucency of the face. That's impressive.
Thank you. Okay, this was colorized for the book cover, but it was created for Brian Keene's The Darkness at the Edge of Town. And this was I had an extra piece of gessoed hardboard sitting by. I had created this mess on another surface as a controlled accident to develop, and I don't know what that was ever for. I don't recall. I just picked up that extra piece of gessoed surface and pressed it against the one that I had just created, and it pulled off in such a tight little veining that I knew I would find something in it eventually. I set it aside. This is only what, like 4 by 8 inches. When I got the job to do The Darkness at the Edge of Town, I saw this guy hanging from this hole in the mess that was this little controlled accident, and I brought him out with mostly just black, some white, but mostly just black.
You know what this reminds me of? The way Michelangelo used to say that the shape would come to him and it would ask to be brought out of the block.
Yes, 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 exactly. That is exactly right. Yes. Okay, this was also Brian Keene. And I forget what it was. It was a zombie novel about people who had gone down in a shipwreck. And they were still alive, but they were sort of infested with sea life. And so I could do whatever I wanted. So I made a controlled accident mess and found this zombie, and then made sure that it looked like it had some life that was growing on it. So it's got some barnacles on the forehead. It's got some worms sticking out of the scalp. There's a little crab tucked into the left eye. And there's a nudibranch that looks like it's come out of the nose.
Mhm. It's impressively busy with things.
It was
There.
fun, you
Yeah.
know.
I love it. I mean, I love shapes and
The publisher liked it.
Yeah.
So,
No, it could almost be a textbook for, biology.
yeah, because we know of that.
Right.
Okay, so this was done years ago, I think 1985. And what I had done was I was just fiddling around with doing space. I did a lot of sort of space paintings, I guess I called them. And I was trying to develop the ability to create spaceships. This was before I had any work, and I was just continually creating portfolio pieces because I was going up to New York and meeting with art directors once or twice a year. And in fiddling around with the paint, I loved creating nebulas and different stellar events. And in this case, I put dark red paint on a white gessoed surface, and I have a Kirby vacuum cleaner. You can take the hose and put it on exhaust, and it will blow instead of suck. And so I had put the paint on there and I blew it, and it's a 2.5 horsepower motor, so it blows hard. And it blew it out into this shape. And because we had cats at the time, it blew all kinds of cat hair into it, which then dried. And I thought, oh, it's ruined. But when it was dry, I brushed my hand over it, all the cat hair fell off, and I had this image back here. I then added the darkest darks and the brightest brights to it, and I had my supernova.
Fantastic.
And the planet is done with oozing white paint into the already painted planet to create the clouds. You know how I described the oozing of paint into a wet surface.
Right.
And of course, the spaceship was just very carefully painted with pushing colored mud around with a hairy stick.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the first one using a vacuum cleaner.
It was the first time I used the vacuum cleaner in painting. That's correct. Okay, so these weird plants in the far background are done the same way I talked about earlier with the palette and the pieces of mat board. Pressing the mat board into the thick paint, pulling it away to create the veining, and then transferring that to the surface. But of course that was put on after I had painted the sky. The sky is developed by pushing the paint around a little bit with the cylinder. The concrete of the sidewalk down below is done by putting, it was a gray paint that became progressively bluer to go off into the distance. And in stages, I would spatter it, and wherever while the paint is still not quite dry and you spatter it, if you spatter it and then touch it with the rotten cotton rag, it pulls it off in a granular fashion like that. And of course, the plants in the foreground, the weeds, they were designed ahead of time and just imposed with by pushing colored mud around with a hairy stick.
Not finding my controls here. Well, I hope I can do it with the down arrow. We'll hope so.
Okay, this was for Brian Smith's Rock and Roll Reform School Zombies, I think it was called. And there you go.
Yeah,
So it was a controlled accident that I imposed her and the guitar on.
okay.
And
That
where the
one-
guitar was, I wanted it to be bright, so I didn't dull it down any. And in the background, you see I've dulled it down just a little bit to push it away.
Little hazy whitish tint to it.
Right,
Yeah.
right, a little bit.
Oh, here we are at the end of the whole thing.
Is that the end of it? Okay.
So, yeah, I think we're at the end.
Are you sure that's the end of it? We've done
Yeah,
all.
sure it's
Excellent.
the end of it.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is get out of slideshow.
Okay, I'm gonna start my video so you can see my old face.
And
And I wore painting clothes today to do this demonstration. And I don't know if we want to try and do that. I have paint ready and a
I don't know,
surface
what
ready.
time are we at, everyone? I couldn't see my time. Oh, it's at, we're
We're
only
at 9
an hour-
o'clock.
We're 1 hour in, and I would say go ahead, because if it were like an hour and a half or 2 hours, we would be too far, but I'm sure
Okay,
people
that's
want to
fine,
know
but
how you do it.
that's fine, but I need to see if I can get my wife to come up here and run the iPad.
Okay, that's fine. We're not
Okay.
on a tight time budget.
Okay, hold on just a second. I'll be right back. It's gonna take me just a second.
So everyone, think of your questions. I'll check the chat right now if I can find it here. See if there are any questions I should be asking. Okay, I see quite a few from Bruce, maybe in the water rippling one, maybe that could be asked. And Bob says something about the the shadows in the domed one with the domes. Okay.
Yeah, most of what I'm saying is just comments.
Yeah, this is this guy,
I found
isn't
it
he
really
incredible?
Yeah, he could be a scientist working in a fluids lab, and just doing the experiments and the effects, and what physical process creates what kind of patterns.
Yes, I think that's what attracted
people
me
get
to him
research.
more than to all the other artists I've seen in the Tucson art shows, which I really like all of them, and I just think it's his method that has made him stand out.
I'm gonna start this iPad. Melly was brushing her teeth, so that's what you get for scheduling this so early. Let's see. Zoom. And I need to put in the code you sent me. Where are you?
Maybe you're still logged in. Did you check?
No,
No, we
join.
only have one copy of you. There'd be 2 copies of you in the participants.
Right. I'm trying to find. Do you want to just? Can you recite it to me again? I think that's the way we did it. We
Don't
didn't
have that ability because
I'm
it's
sorry, you
intermediate.
what?
I do not have it.
Oh. Okay. Well.
You wrote it down somewhere.
Did I? Oh, I wrote it down in notes. That's it. Okay, hang on.
You did write it down.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
It's 848. Three one seven.
This is very good. It's like candid camera. We're not, this is not like your very polished thing. And that's fine because this is about controlled accidents, damn it.
Okay,
All right.
join. It dumped it. Well, that's terrible. 8 4
Try it again. Bob said sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times. I hope it's going to work.
7 9 8.
There, now you showed up.
Okay, now I need to quit this. I'm
Recording in progress.
okay. I'm quitting this in
Okay,
the computer.
all right.
Leave
Let me
me.
see. It says we have 7 participants now, so you can leave.
What is it?
However you get out of your one that you're in. There, good. Okay.
Okay. Now hello?
Hello, you'll have to share screen again.
Okay. Share.
Open up and whatever it is that you're trying to show.
Gallery view. Okay.
Speaker view makes you the big picture in the center.
I don't see that. What'd you call that?
Speaker view. That's the view of the speaker without everyone else having to take up part of the screen.
Okay, I don't know how to do that.
Well, I have you in that. I think it's recording you in that, so don't worry about it. It's going with the person that's recording.
Okay, well, I've got to make this so that Melody can see where to aim it, and I don't even see me in here.
Because you didn't turn on your video. Remember, start video? At the
Start video.
bottom left. There.
Okay, got it. Okay. So, and then I need that to be the whole screen. And I don't know how to do that.
You are the need, well, you need
Hang
to
on.
share screen.
Okay, there we go. So that's all you got is right there. Okay,
That's
so
it. Okay.
this is a 2x4 foot surface that I have.
Oh, I got my finger over.
Yeah. Okay. So I have put different colors of red and yellow on here, and I have mixed these ugly colors. They're not ugly,
I don't know if I need to be closer or.
but they're here. You can sort of see that showed over here. That's what color that is. I don't know if you can see that.
I want the surface.
Okay. Well, that's all right. I'm gonna wet this surface to facilitate the spreading of the paint. And if you have difficulty seeing, you can give Melody some direction.
I've got you just the bottom half of you. I don't have your head. I just
It looks great. It looks great.
Okay.
Sorry, what was that?
He said it looked great.
Okay.
We love it. It's wonderful.
Okay. So, water, paint, big brushes. Where's my tube? Now, there's my balloon. I'm gonna need that. What did I do with the tube?
There's the Ada. There's the balloon. What do I got my hands full. What are you doing?
Oh, here it is.
If you want your balloon, you're gonna need to grab it yourself.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to find the tubes. There they are. Okay.
The dog should grab some brushes.
Yeah. Hello.
Okay.
You don't want the balloon?
Not yet.
Okay.
Cute dog.
Thank you.
That's Ziada, the exotic bearded lady. So again, the consistency of blood. Does that make sense? Can you see that?
Yes, very clearly.
Making your sound effects.
And I'm not trying to put this on in any particular way, except to create sort of a composition that's not, well, I don't know how to say that. So I'm just going to shut up.
Maybe you don't want it too symmetrical.
Well, I don't want it symmetrical.
That's right. Yeah, and that's obvious.
I want surprises.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to control the surprises, see?
Right.
But you also don't want backseating painting, right?
What's that?
You also don't want backseating painting.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, well, people telling you how to paint, basically.
Oh, okay. You can
Like a backseat driver.
you can backseat you can backseat paint. I'll just ignore you.
Okay.
This is hard on my hand.
I'm sorry.
Jeez. My right hand's going to sleep.
This
Maybe
is
there's
great.
some-
Thank you for showing all this.
To your wife, is there some box you could sort of balance it on?
Oh,
And-
probably.
Now
But
that would-
I'm
that would
kind of
give your
trying to
hand-
move around and keep up with him.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's I don't know.
switch hands or something.
Well, I'm holding it with both hands.
Oh, I
It's
see.
kind of big, yeah.
Oh,
It's an iPad.
right.
She has tiny hands too. I gotta keep this moist enough that it's not gonna dry on me.
Mhm.
I also wonder how long a usual piece would take. Is this going to be like hours or minutes? Or...
Yes, you're stuck here for
Yeah, you have to
hours.
sit here for 6 hours. You can't
Yes.
eat, you can't go to the bathroom, you can't do anything.
I am.
Well-
You gotta just stare at the painting.
That's right.
I don't want to be forcing you to be there for hours. So
Well, you need to behave yourself.
He does these
That's
fairly.
good. Tell
Alright.
Chris. That's good.
Okay, so you see I've covered the entire surface.
It's finished.
Okay, so I'm not gonna develop this into a finished painting. I'm gonna do the controlled accident part. That's all I'm doing. Okay, so I can demonstrate some of this stuff like that. You see that?
Mhm.
That's not
clear.
very appealing, but sometimes these demonstrations aren't very appealing because I'm kind of in a hurry.
Well, you did a pinwheel one at Tucson with a smaller thing. You showed how you can do pinwheels and,
This is not wet enough. Hang on.
okay.
Now I got my fingers over the camera, trying to move my hand. I don't know how close you want me to do this. Don't hit me with that.
is this considered decalmania or what?
It is something like decalcomania, but decalcomania means the use of decals.
Okay.
And
Whoops.
so this is
I just did something. I hit something. Something little with the red speaker with the line through it came up.
We can
We
still
can
see
hear
it.
you. We can still see and hear you.
Okay.
Oh, look at that balloon. I never have painted with a balloon. Oh, I've got to do this.
I don't know how close you want me to. I don't want to get too close because you get paint all over me.
Oh, man.
That's right.
This is getting my right hand.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just me being rough. This is me with no purpose, just making messes.
Okay.
And they're fun messes. These are the sorts of things I work with. Can you see it?
Looks
what the
cool.
word is.
Yes.
They're almost like fractals, you know, those veiny floral like
Right.
branches. They're fantastic, and you don't have to paint them. They just appear.
Can you see it all, Melly?
Oh,
Can
yeah.
Here, let's do it like
Yes.
this.
Can everyone see it? I'm
There we
seeing it.
go.
This is great.
Oh, yeah. Look at that one. That one on that you just showed it. The last one was fantastic. Yeah, so Bruce
You
Bailey
mean over here?
saying it's amazing. Yeah, look at that. Oh. Just, oh.
Yeah, so I did not aim well with this one, but I got some good results. When
You did.
I say I didn't aim well, it means I was not controlling the accident very well. I was just trying to demonstrate.
Mhm.
It's hard to concentrate on what I'm doing and talk at the same time. So,
Okay.
but I enjoy this one,
We're
and
not
and I
seeing the board or you at the moment. We're looking at your feet.
okay. Here. I'm wearing my
You know, we're seeing someone's hand
where
in your feet.
oh, there we go. I'm wearing my surgery socks.
Oh, okay.
These are from a recent colonoscopy.
Oh,
All
well,
right.
here you go. So the camera is sort of being a controlled, we have a controlled accident camera. Oh, there you are.
Yes. So I was going to describe what show him Jasper. Okay, I'm going to show you Jasper.
Okay.
Nellie wants me to show you Jasper. There's
Oh,
Jasper.
look at Jasper. Hello, Jasper.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Jasper is a skipper
Yay.
key.
Yeah.
Oh,
we
and
like
this
your
is my
dog.
studio.
Uh-huh.
Very
It's sort of,
nice.
it's less crowded than Ray Bradbury's garage, but it has its inspirations.
It's got junk everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. It's a mess. What?
As it should.
Oh,
it
and Melly wants me to show you my
Oh, wait.
mummified animal mobile.
Oh my gosh, look at that.
Made with real mummified animals.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Pickled punks.
Yes,
Yeah.
pickled punks.
Pickled
Very
punks,
good.
boy.
Very
Oh, I'm
good.
gonna put
Yes.
that in the PR for watching this, that we have pickled
So
punks.
Melly,
They're
these
gonna love
things
it.
need to go into the bathtub and be washed. Is that something you could do with the balloon at least?
Wash it too.
No, just put it in the bathroom. Just spray it. Spray it with water.
So you don't
Okay.
need me anymore.
So no, I don't need you anymore.
Just
Thank
the
you.
balloon?
I still love you, but
Just the balloon?
actually all of it if you're willing.
I don't. If I
Are you guys there?
Oh, we're all here. We're just
Okay.
astounded, especially after seeing the pickled punks. We hardly know what to
Oh,
say.
yes.
So I wanted to tell you the background on all of this. I love Max Ernst. This is my favorite artist.
Freaking
And,
sorry, y'all. I
and
can't open the door down there.
I'll open it. And
I'm
he
dripping paint everywhere.
that's okay, I'll clean it up. And he explored what art could do in ways that I just found fascinating. He took a lot of risks in painting, particularly to see what paint could do for him. And he seemed to do this thing I call forced hallucination. The Surrealists believed that if they could stimulate the subconscious mind of the viewer, that they had really achieved something. So I don't. I loved all of that exploration. I loved the surprises that came from cleaning up a mess in paint. When I was a kid, I loved highlights that I would find at the dentist's office and the doctor's office, because they had those pictures where you could find things hidden anyway. I loved all that stuff. And when I was a hippie kid and being very bad and doing LSD with my friends, we did a lot of art together. And when you're hallucinating, you can end up finding things that are very odd. and I did. And I began to see what paint could do. My parents let me paint my entire bedroom when I was a boy. That was a long time ago. I'm 68. No, I'm 67. But me and my friends, we painted all the walls of my room and the ceiling, not the floor. We painted the furniture, but we did stuff on the walls that we could then look into and find stuff. And one friend I had was terrible at human figures and faces. But in one of his accidents, he found a face and was able to accentuate what he saw so that it really stood out, and it was a beautiful face. His mind had found the face that his designing brain could not get to. And I realized that I could learn from myself if I tried to do that. Human figures are really hard. And gaining an intuitive understanding of human form is a long process. And there are people that just have that ability. I did not. And so I learned in some ways how to paint human beings, how to invent human beings in painting and drawing by finding them first. Finding them that way set them in my imagination in a way that was more intuitive than trying to duplicate. Does that make any sense?
So did you kind of form human beings from what you were reading or from what you were experiencing?
Well, what I'm saying is that initially I found them in the paint. And they weren't, this was me learning. This was not doing illustration assignments. So I learned how to create human forms first by finding those, and that giving me more of an intuition of how to reach for them when I had no model. And in illustration, you have to think fast on your feet, because hiring a model is expensive. So you have to be able to invent. You have to be able to invent just about everything you create in an illustration. By definition, it being fiction, it doesn't exist. So you have to learn how to create everything. And the more you can do without having to have a model, the better, because it's time consuming trying to set up scenes or pose figures or worse, paying a model to come into your home or to have to go to them. That's just, I did a little bit of that sort of thing, and I gave up on it really quickly and buckled down to learn better how to invent.
Sure.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you ever, or have you ever worked like for mystery covers or other genres?
I have. I've done mysteries. I've done a little bit of Westerns. I do quite a lot of historical fiction. All my novels are historical fiction. So And I do illustrations for my books. And yeah, I've done medical illustration. I've done medical illustrations for textbooks and for well, one of them was for Vanderbilt's PhD, their PhD/MD program. It was a promotional poster, and it was, I think it was cell wall with hormones. Anyway, I like all that. I like all the biology, but I don't.
That
I've
shows. It
I've done
shows. Oh,
I've done
sorry.
a few jobs like that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Your medical illustration and scientific illustration work shows, and I wouldn't have thought, in advance of that, but now that I'm thinking back to your paintings, it shows.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I do. I've done science fiction, fantasy, horror. Go ahead, Bruce.
Let me jump in, because I think you have begun answering the question I asked a while ago. In that picture where you invented the ripple technique for the water, there was this really detailed skeleton that had a bunch of differences from a human skeleton,
Right.
but it looked like all the differences could be really functional in terms of where the muscles would attach, or the different kinds of motions that the creature would go through. It looked like it was not just a random skeleton; it was a skeleton that was ready to get down and do something, but it was not the same tasks that a human is taking on.
Okay. Well, that's nice. Thank you. Are you asking why?
Yes. Yeah. We're
Well, I'm not sure why with that, except I bring certain sensibilities to what I produce. I want things to look like they would function.
Yeah.
I have a background in bones, actually. My grandfather was dean of anatomy at Vanderbilt University for a long time. He and Dr. Ransom wrote the definitive neuroanatomy book used for about 40 years. All that stuff is still taught based on their research. They mapped the brain, and much of what we know about the brain today comes from their research. And I grew up in a home that had lots of bones. His bedroom had skulls on little glass plinths alongside his microscope and his medical books. And I grew up looking at those medical books. Also, Nashville, Tennessee, which is where I'm from, was the sacred hunting and burial grounds of Indians on into prehistoric times. And that's because there were salt springs that drew the animals there. So the hunting was good, and you want to bury your dead with animals. So anytime they were building houses in Nashville when my father was a boy, they were uncovering Indian burials. And he and his father would go to collect the relics that these guys would have thrown away. Okay, so he said they would go and watch them bulldozing and digging foundations for houses. And one thing that he said was when they saw skulls rolling in front of the bulldozer blade, they would ask the crew to stop and let them see what they had found, what they had uncovered. And so I grew up in a home that had lots of Indian relics and lots of bones, lots of medical books. And so I have some sort of intuitive background. Also, I grew up in Oak Hill, which is a suburb of Nashville. And the Battle of Nashville took place there. And across the street from us was Browns Creek. And it would erode the bank when it flooded. And it eroded the bank so that it exposed Civil War dead buried shallowly during the Battle of Nashville, which was a siege. And my brother and I collected the bones and took them up to the house and put the skulls back together. And Daddy, my father was a neurologist. He had followed in his father's footsteps. And so he had lots of fun with his boys and their skeletons.
Whoa. Well, that's an amazing education. That's
Well, that was real adventure for me, for
Okay.
sure.
no one.
Hands-on learning.
Yes,
Yes.
hands-on learning. But also, you notice that skeleton you just asked about was in a creek bank.
Yeah.
Well, so I didn't realize I was depicting that event from my childhood until I was artist guest of honor at World Horror in Atlanta, and Jill Bauman, you guys probably know Jill, she's in Tucson now. Anyway, Jill interviewed me, and during the interview, I was discussing these very same things, and somebody from the audience raised